Welcome to another episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. I'm Roy Furr, and as you can see, if you are watching, I have some guests today. I have Rob Marsh and Kira Hug from the Copywriter Club, and let's just dive in with a quick question. Okay, Rob, Kira, with 14,000 plus copywriters in the Copywriter Club and over 1.2 million podcast episode downloads, which of you two is most responsible for your success, and which one is the total slacker?
Kira is responsible for the success, and I'm the slacker. No doubt about it.
Oh my God. No. Rob gets stuff done, like for example, filling out your form for your podcast. Who filled it out? Rob. Who probably would never fill it out? Me. So Rob keeps us getting stuff done, getting things published, the business moving forward. Otherwise, I would just go on a retreat and never come back and just get lost in my thoughts.
Maybe the right answer is we've got a pretty good team, a small but mighty team that helps us get stuff done.
That's the right
Awesome.
answer, yeah.
These are the proven direct response marketing, copywriting, and entrepreneurship success strategies you can use today to write your own ticket and create the life you want. I am Roy Furr, and this is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Now, here's today's breakthrough. Well, let's talk about teams and partnerships in a minute. But for those of you who don't know, Rob Marsh and Kira Hug are copywriters, both with a ton of success on their own as copywriters. They're also the co-founders of the Copywriter Club and co-hosts of the incredibly popular, at least among discerning copywriters, podcast of the same name, the Copywriter Club. And I had the good fortune to meet them and to appear on the Copywriter Club a few years back, and so I feel very fortunate to be flipping that around today and getting to grill them about some topics that they know quite a lot about as leaders of this big group that is the Copywriter Club. So, Rob and Kira, continuing with a little bit of lightheartedness from the intro, your website addresses the rumor that you met on Tinder. Are you willing to confirm or deny this?
I have a feeling Kira will confirm it and I'll deny it. So yeah.
Yes, we did. We met on a Skype. Was it Skype at the time? I don't even think we were using Zoom. I think it was back in the day.
Yeah. We were part of a mastermind, and Kira was smart enough to think, hey, maybe I should get to know everybody in the mastermind. And so she actually reached out to me and just said, hey, let's hop on a call for 20 minutes. So yeah, we connected that way and just kind of created a friendship that has blossomed into so much more.
Yeah. I don't remember doing that too. I don't remember reaching out to you, Rob. I don't remember any of that.
I still have the email. I'll find it and we'll share it with somebody.
She's not claiming that. For real though, you seem to have a really solid partnership that's now gone on. I don't know exactly how many years. You would know better than I. But you've been in this business. You've built this business together for years. You now have a team. I think it's interesting. I once heard that a lot of very successful startups have two founders, and there's an increase in success for startups that have two founders versus one, as long as, of course, they have a good relationship and a good partnership. So, what do you think has been behind creating your solid partnership and leading the Copywriter Club together?
Well, I think part of it is that we're very different. So I think we can reach more people through our unique expertise. What Rob brings to the table is very different from what I bring to the table. We always joke about Rob is business school, I'm art school. And so part of it is we're going to attract a larger pool of people. But also we bring just a totally different experience and skill set that we can pull into the business. So I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And then I would add to that just a high level of trust. Thanks to those initial conversations, we met at an event where a bunch of people, that were in that mastermind got together. It sort of developed over a couple of years. And by the time we were ready to launch whatever it was, whatever the Copywriter Club was going to become. And we didn't have a real business plan in place. We knew it wasn't just a podcast, and we knew it wasn't just, hanging out, having fun, but we didn't know exactly what we would end up building. But we had just this high level of trust. I knew that if I put in time, if I helped create something, that Kira was going to do it as well. And I think that has lasted over the 5 years that we've been doing this thing together.
I think part of that is like, we got lucky because we didn't know each other that well. When we went into this business together, we had met once, like you said, at a conference where we didn't hang out that much. And then we had been in the mastermind group. But I think part of it is like, we got lucky because Rob had a good vibe, but also I didn't know him. I didn't know that it was going to work out. I think I took a chance on you and you took a chance on me.
Yeah, there's definitely luck involved.
So if you could go back to the beginning, is there a way that you feel like, or maybe in a new venture, is there a way that you feel like you would screen for complementary skill sets or anything you've learned along the way that you would look for in a partner?
It's funny that
either one of you.
It's funny that you asked that because we have talked about this, looking back, you've heard, I'm sure, of the EOS system, visionary and integrator and all of that. And both Kira and I tend to be visionary. Although at times we have had to step into an integrator role and, create some things. But as we've talked about this in the past, we've advised other people saying, maybe it's not always the best to have two visionaries together because sometimes we don't finish stuff, as fast as we would like to, or we don't, things don't happen as fast because, I'll have an idea and I'm like, this is a great idea. And we get started on it. And then Kira has an idea and that's another great idea. And we should get started on that. And so, we have more ideas than we can execute on. And I'm not saying that either one of us would have chosen a different partner because it has worked out. Things have been really good. But looking back, maybe if we had that framework in our heads, we would have ended up with somebody differently. Yeah.
So Rob, you wish I was more of an integrator. Is that what you're trying to say?
Only as much as you wish I were an integrator. Yeah.
Well, I love that. And that is totally true that, there so many businesses succeed in the beginning because they have a visionary, somebody like bringing new ideas to the table. But I've worked in businesses where, man, if that visionary is not restrained a little bit by an integrator, the business just goes every direction, and that's not conducive to success. So I came to you wanting to talk about two big topics as someone who's observed the growth of the Copywriter Club for a number of years. I want to talk to you about community and audience building. And we'll talk a little bit about copywriting too, but clearly this community and audience building has been a big part of your success in the Copywriter Club. So you initially grew the Copywriter Club to 7,000 members within 12 months, and you now have over 14,000 copywriters. Let's start with the benefit to the copywriters themselves. How are copywriters served by connecting and participating in a community like yours? And what do you see as some of the biggest benefits there?
Yeah, I think the first part is that it's free, and that's huge. The Facebook group we started initially, that's still going and has 14,000 people, is totally free. And it's been supported by our team the entire time. It's well organized, so it's a way for them to connect with each other. And then the podcast also, it's also free. And I feel like we've created the podcast so it feels like each episode is a masterclass, and really put a lot of time into what's going to make people come back to this podcast. What can we give them that could change their business and help them make more money? Even though this is a free platform for them. So I think that's where it starts with like, here's a gift for you. We really enjoy making it. Hopefully it helps you. And then it's really rewarding to know that it has helped some people who continue to come back to the podcast.
Yeah. And then we hear from people who engage in the Facebook or who hear the podcast. It's like, oh, I've found my people. And that's kind of a magical thing. This, Roy, I know your story a bit. When you start out as a copywriter and you're kind of on your own, if you don't have a mentor or a group of people that you can turn to, where do you get answers to the questions? You can go to Google or somewhere else on the internet or Quora, and ask your questions, but the answers you get aren't always satisfactory. And sometimes they're wrong a lot of times they're incomplete, even if they're right. And so having a community around you that can support you, that can be your people and help you get through questions, concerns, things that are going wrong, help celebrate wins, it's invaluable. I wish that I had done it years before I actually did, is, to start connecting with other copywriters. One of the things that if I could go back and do over again, I would totally change in my own business. And hopefully we're providing that for copywriters who, are at all levels of the business, from just starting out to expert, way to connect with each other.
I remember when I got started as a copywriter in 2005, but I didn't actually, I got a marketing job. And then I did copywriting, and I was in that marketing job until late 2009 was the first time I went to any in-person copywriting event. And actually, it turned out that another copywriter who was going to be at that event lived in the same town as me. And so we had the opportunity. We went to lunch before that. And it was the first time where I really felt like, I'm meeting my people. Then suddenly you're in this space with all these other people who are copywriters, and we can feel like aliens to the rest of the world, but we're so familiar to each other that just having a place to connect is hugely beneficial, and recognize that, there are people who are doing this and having the same ups and having the same downs and going through the same experiences, and can be resources. So specific to the Facebook group, well, I don't know. I guess it's kind of hard to separate these things. Which one came first, I guess, the Facebook group or the podcast?
They came at the same time. Rob, you're muted, but they came at the same time. We launched the podcast first, and then a couple of days later, we opened the Facebook group. Is that right, Rob?
We recorded 4 or 5 episodes and went live with them. And then we opened the Facebook group almost at the exact same time, so that people could talk about what we were talking about on the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it is a unified brand. What do you feel like, and maybe Kira, you were already getting to this with the amount of value that you're putting out there just for free, but what do you think is behind the growth of the Copywriter Club? Was it specific things you did? Are there things that we maybe don't see from the outside, or benefits of good fortune, good timing, being in the right place at the right time? How much of those different things added up, and do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, I think that the group took off because we were inviting the right people in early on. And I hate to use the word influencer, but we were inviting people, copywriters we felt like were influential, that we had a connection to. I was going through my Rolodex to see, okay, this copywriter, I know if she's in the room, she's going to be engaged and people are going to want to be around her. And so I'm going to invite her. And so it was just pulling from all of our relationships to get the right people in the room, so that we wouldn't necessarily have to hang out in there all the time, but it would just take off without us. And it would remove us from being the Kira and Rob show, where if we disappear, walk away for a day, it's quiet, but get other people in there to lead conversation. So I think it was really strategic invitations early on that then just kind of built into that momentum and built the group early on.
Yeah. And Kira's kind of underselling her role in actually really curating who was in that group. When we launched it, she spent the first 3 months really intentionally reaching out to almost all the copywriters that we could connect to, not just people that we were really close to, but I can even remember getting a message from her saying, "Hey, I just found this list of 200 copywriters in Australia. I'm going to email them all and ask them to join the group." She was looking for people to connect with. But that's one of Kira's strengths, and when we were talking earlier about how do you match up together, that's not something that I would have done, but it's something that Kira's really good at, connecting with people, seeing who they are for who they are, helping people connect. And because she was so intentional about that, the group grew really fast, and it really started out with a bang. It wasn't, hey, 30 people and then 32 people the next week, and there's hardly any discussions happening. Within a few weeks, there were dozens of discussions happening and people interacting and sharing knowledge. And then that just helped perpetuate it even more. Facebook then started saying, hey, add these people. And the growth was, phenomenal.
I like the intentionality there of wanting to create, to the nomenclature of the club, wanting to create a group of people who would contribute to each other and not just add numbers, right? To some degree, when you say, oh, there's a list of 200 Australian copywriters, that does feel a little bit like adding numbers. But the intentional process at the beginning of saying, okay, here are people who I believe would make this a better place to hang out. That makes it feel like a community that you want to be a part of, not just some place where a bunch of people who share this name of copywriter, who've all hung out their shingles as copywriters, have clicked the join button. So.
And then add to that, even though there may have been some copywriters that we didn't know closely, the personal invitation, hey, come hang out with us. We've got this cool group. That also helps make a difference.
Excellent. So I feel like to some degree, this question has already been answered, but at this point there are a million free Facebook groups for everything from copywriting to whatever. So is there anything that you believe still distinguishes the Copywriter Club today versus signing up for, some other copywriter Facebook group?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that is something. Now there are tons of groups, and the reason, even back then, the reason why I wanted to start it is I had been kicked out of a couple other Facebook copywriting groups, maybe more DR focused, and I was kicked out. So I was like, I want a group where I fit in, where I can be a part of it. So, but now I'm sure I could find so many different groups where I might, if I were to start it now, I might not even want to start it because there's so many great groups out there. So it's shifted a bit. I think what holds our community together today is different. The strength of our programs and the communities we build in our paid programs actually feeds into the free community, because I believe if you create a really strong community in those more intimate rooms, then it'll bleed out into the larger community, because people will show up and continue to contribute to those conversations because they care about the brand, they care about the community. So it kind of works in an ecosystem where now we've focused on those communities, and you can feel it in how it works together.
So to some degree, you're what I want to say, you are cultivating those personalities. So originally you said, I want all these people here because they're already cool, right? And they're already the type of copywriters I want to hang out with. And now your programs are like, how can we make more people like that? How can we create more people who have this sense of community, but also have a lot to contribute themselves? And your programs are feeding into that, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The other thing too is that we've made community part of everything that we do. And this is, I think, something that's very different about the courses that we do, or the events. Like, community is a really big part of it. It's very rare that you buy something from us and you're on your own. We do things with cohorts. We like to introduce people and create those relationships between the people who are going through a particular thing with us. Because if we can help you build your network, in addition to teaching you how to do something like find clients or lay the foundations for your business, whatever, you're going to get so much more out of what we're teaching. You don't just walk away knowing how to write a headline. You walk away knowing how to write a headline, and you've got 5 people that you can bounce headlines around with to make them even better.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And the cool thing is that those communities will continue beyond what we do with them. So if a program ends, like, we say goodbye, great. If they can jump into our membership, great, that's good. But even if they don't, they can stay in touch with the people they met, and that community continues to go on beyond us. And I think that's the sign of a real community, where it exists beyond what Rob and I are a part of. And we can help them start it, but we don't need to be there with them the entire time. The whole point is that they don't need us eventually.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about the podcast and its role in all of this. So you're now up to more than 300 episodes. Last I checked, I think it was 309 was the last one published. Yep. And you crossed a milestone recently. You crossed 1 million downloads. And then I hear from Rob that you're already at 1.2. So crossing more milestones fairly quickly. What do you think, especially in a niche like copywriting? Copywriting is fairly small. What do you think has made your podcast in particular so popular?
That is a really, really good question.
I know the answer, Rob.
Go for it. Yeah.
It's Rob's voice.
Yeah.
He has a really great radio voice, and people come back for it all the time.
I mean, I wish that it were my voice. It's funny, when we started the podcast initially, we were thinking, okay, it's a 20 to 30 minute conversation. And if you go back to those very first episodes, and you were on one of the first, you were like in the first 30, I think, was like 22 or 23, something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but those episodes were a lot shorter than they are today. And at some point we realized it's like, actually, there's so much stuff that we want to talk to people about that oftentimes our podcasts hit an hour long. And I think part of the attraction for what people get from us is that they're hearing real stories, and it's how I got started in this, how I found my first clients, a lot of the same things from copywriters, but the variety is eye-opening. And there are so many different ways to build a copywriting business, and there's so many different things that you can do with it. And we've been lucky to be able to shine a light on a lot of that. And I think because we're always willing to explore new ideas, new things, people keep coming back, and just because you learned how to do something on episode 92 doesn't mean that you don't have more to learn by episode number 309.
Yeah. Part of it too is it's evolved as we've evolved. And I think that helps keep it interesting, because if it was the same show and we're asking similar questions, maybe not the same questions, I think copywriters would grow out of it, right? They need it, and then they wouldn't need it anymore. But I'm hoping that people stick around because we continue to follow our own interest and as it changes. And so part of it, when we hit our 200th episode, we changed the format of the show completely. And we added commentary, usually by the two of us, on top of the interview. So we were adding more Kira and Rob to each episode. And partly that was hopefully to make a stronger episode, but partly it was because I was getting a little bored with the podcast. I wanted it to be more interesting and to switch it up, because if we're not engaged and we're not interested in having fun every episode, it's not going to be fun listening to it. So the topics have changed. I think we've gone deeper recently. Even in a recent podcast, we talked about addiction, alcoholism. We've talked about domestic abuse, topics that aren't necessarily the focus of the episode, but we're willing to kind of veer off because we can be copywriters and talk about hard things and still pull it back to business.
That's something that I love to drop in here and there, is just like any kind of episode that's completely or topic that's completely irrelevant to copywriting. And I'll put that in air quotes here, because who we are as human beings is going to influence who we are as copywriters. And so I just recorded one on the economy and how the economy, how we exist within the economy. And because I have the financial copywriting background, I have maybe a unique perspective. And I've also talked about ADHD and all that crazy stuff. And oftentimes it's those episodes where people actually connect with it most, or there's something I actually have this Buddhist painting on my wall, which you don't see very much in most of my camera shots, but somebody saw it and they said, when I saw that, I had to sign up for your training for at least a month, because that painting and the meaning in it means so much to me. And so I had to figure out what you were saying about copywriting. And it's strange, the things that we connect with. So I did look up, my episode is number 24. I'll make sure to include a link.
So I almost got it right. I knew it was right in there somewhere.
It's very close to the beginning. So the question was episode 24 the high point or the best episode of it?
Both. It was both. Yeah. So actually, I mean, I remember a lot of the stuff we talked about in that episode, because you were the first person that talked about how do we charge royalties. And that was something that, for our audience was pretty new for a lot of people who listened. And honestly, almost 4 years later, I still think that if you listen to it today, it's every bit as good and every bit as applicable as it was then. So yeah, everybody should go back and listen to that episode.
Well, thank you.
But I do think we should get you back on the podcast, because it's been a long time. So you need
time for another visit. Yeah.
I would be happy to. So what in the context of podcasting is, well, let me change this pre-written question. So what is maybe an unexpected impact that podcasting has had either on what you do as copywriters or on the Copywriter Club? Has there been something surprising about it to you?
So for me, and this isn't necessarily like an impact on our business, the most surprising thing to me is when somebody tells us that the reason that they're a copywriter today is because of our podcast. And that has happened, more than just a handful of times where people come up and say, without your podcast, I wouldn't have ever thought it was possible, or without your podcast, I wouldn't have even known this thing was available to me. You guys made it seem like it was doable. And, today I'm earning, 5 figures a month or 6, whatever the thing is that they're getting out of the business. And honestly, like when I hear that, it still surprises me, but it's immensely gratifying to know that we've been able to have that kind of an impact, at least on a handful of people. And hopefully, the broader audience is also getting something out of it. Maybe we didn't bring them to copywriting, but if we've been able to have an impact on their business, I did not expect that when we started out, that was going to be the thing. And so personally, that's been the biggest surprise.
Yeah. And
awesome.
For me, I can say something very obnoxious, but in a way it's impacted me. I recently went vegan, and I have to share it with the world because I was told that's what you have to do.
Vegans
talk
do
about
that.
it all the time. Talk about it all the time.
You should take up CrossFit so you can talk about that too.
I'm going to do CrossFit next, and I'm going to talk about that all the time. And but I did it because of an interview on the podcast. It's not like I didn't know about it. I've been attempting to kind of jump into that world for a while, but it was an interview on the podcast with Topaz Hooper, who is a cruelty-free copywriter who's been in our program and niched down in one of our programs. But just speaking with her, I was so inspired, and she said the right thing at the right time to motivate me to make a pretty big change. And so I think that's the power of podcasting, is like, if you hear the right message at the right time, you can make a dramatic change and shift in your life. And I'm lucky to be front row and to be able to ask the questions, because selfishly, the podcast is for me. It's for me to change and improve my life. And I get to ask the questions I want to ask. So part of it is personal. And there are other examples of how I've changed my life based on other interviews too that have surprised me. But to go back to kind of what Rob was saying, like what we can do now is spotlight other people. So it's amazing that we've encouraged copywriters to pursue this career that we all believe in is great. But now we have this podcast and platform where we can highlight people. And that feels like an Oprah moment, right? It's like, cool. It's not about Rob and Kira. It's about how can we actually help another copywriter by putting them on the show, and then they get a client or they get a new opportunity out of it. And that feels really exciting at this point.
Let me give you a business lesson too that's come from Roy. Is we have found that people who listen to our podcast and then join our groups, especially our membership, stay longer. And, I'm certain that's because they get to know who we are by listening to the podcast. They feel more comfortable with us. They know the things that we may be able to help them with. And so they stay in our programs longer. And so, where you're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs who may be doing something similar, the more people that you can introduce to your voice, your thinking, and podcasting is the best way to do it, because it happens inside your head, not on a computer screen or in a book or whatever. Like, you're literally listening to people inside your head. If you can make that connection with people, then when you're selling them something, they tend to stick around longer.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. That the people who are really engaged with the podcast episodes and then become clients in whatever way, shape, or form, they become much better clients than someone who maybe stumbles on an offer and is,
Exactly.
impulse buys it. So you've had the community and the podcast working together for a long time. How has that informed your that's driven the growth of the Copywriter Club brand? How's that informed your live events, your gatherings, your programs, and how you've chosen to develop those calm products or offers?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the community idea. We really do put community as a big part of everything. Like, even at our live event, you don't just come to the event, sit in a chair and, listen to the speakers and go back to your room, order room service. Like, for lunch, for dinner, everybody who comes, we connect them with 6 or 7 other people, and you guys go to lunch together, you go to dinner together. Like, we have taken that building community and building network thing and really made it part of the process of everything we do. So I know that sounds, I'm a little bit of a broken record here because we've kind of talked about that, but honestly, the power of community is so important, and it really does change the way that we, the way we go to market with everything that we do. It's an integral part of everything you do at the Copywriter Club.
Yeah, and also the way it kind of works together is if we're working closely with copywriters in our, let's say in our mastermind group, the Think Tank Mastermind, a lot of our calls are one-on-one. So we really get to know those members. And I feel like I wouldn't be able to host the podcast in the way I do if I didn't have that intimacy where I just know the struggles and at different levels based off those conversations. So then I can ask the right question in the podcast interview. So I feel like it strengthens both sides so we can create better content because we're doing client work with copywriters, like we're in the trenches with them. And then it just goes around. Then people listen to that podcast and they're more likely to become a client. So it's like a really nice ecosystem that feeds itself.
Yeah. So at this point, the most of the people that you feature on the podcast, are they members of the Copywriter Club in one way, shape, or form? And I mean, it's certainly cool to have something that's built this momentum, not just for the business having momentum, but for everybody within the community having momentum, that your success stories now have a lot to teach. So if I'm listening to some random recent episode of the Copywriters Club, what's the likelihood that that's going to be someone who kind of, we'll say, came up within the Copywriters Club to some degree?
It's definitely a mix. It's probably 25 to 30% have been through, like a think tank or an accelerator program that we've done. And then we'll interview other people like yourself. You haven't been through, our programs, but we're aware of you. We see the things that you're doing. We just completed an interview with the owner of the Ad Girls, Facebook advertising agency. Just an amazing company that she's built from scratch, and she and her partner have this amazing team. So we like to mix it up. When we first launched the podcast, the intro said that we were talking to copywriters and other experts, and so that you have ideas to steal. That's still kind of the way we operate. It's copywriters and other experts, and we like to talk to anybody who can help us grow our skills or impact our business in some kind of a positive way.
Yeah. I've enjoyed being able to, as a podcaster, reach out and say, oh, hey, like an example for me, I started using this platform called FocusMate, which has virtual co-working where you just log in and it's one-on-one. Yeah. And so as soon as I signed up and I'm like, this is super cool, I'm going to use this all the time, I reached out to the CEO and I said, hey, can I interview you? Because I think your platform is cool and it's useful for people like me who work from home, who maybe need some help staying focused. And so you have that opportunity to bring those different voices into the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is just, who's interesting right now. They might not be related to copywriting at all, but if Rob is really excited about that person, then that's going to be a really good episode because he's going to bring that enthusiasm and those questions, and people are going to want to listen. So I think that's really important to our show too.
Yeah. And you learn, I mean, copywriters are curious, right? If we only talked to copywriters, we would have episodes that are, how do you write headlines? How do you do your research? Like, at some point you want to learn about other things, and all of that stuff makes you a better copywriter.
And arguably the most boring copywriters that I meet, and I'm not going to name any names,
aside from yours truly,
are the people who only study copywriting. Like at this point, I'm way more interested in like psychology books or what's going on. Who knows, right? Like I've been one of those people who's like, I only read nonfiction, but now I'm into all sorts of fiction, and I don't know if it's making me a better copywriter yet, but just those different interests. I remember meeting Arthur Johnson, who a lot of people don't know him, but one of the best copywriters of the late 20th, early 21st century. And I think he was the one. It was either him or Eric Betchwell said that he had opened one marketing or copywriting book one time, and he immediately decided to close it. And since then, he's never read another marketing or copywriting book. And he became one of the best direct mail copywriters in the business. And so arguably, we don't need to just consume that, the how to write a good advertisement in order to become a good copywriter.
I'm definitely not going to argue with Arthur Johnson if he actually said that. I mean, to me, it's a mix, right? It's good to keep a hand in the thing that you do. So, if you pick up a book on copywriting, you review breakthrough advertising every couple of years, whatever, that's awesome. But read history, read philosophy, read psychology, read fiction. There's life is so interesting, and to get stuck doing one thing only, how immensely boring that would be.
Yes. I mean, I use that as an example as I'm looking at my shelf full of copywriting and marketing books. So, So together you've spoken with hundreds of copywriters about their successes. What kind of big lessons have been consistent between the different conversations? Anything that has kind of stuck with you in terms of lessons learned to be successful as a copywriter today?
Good question. Not necessarily just for copywriters, and I'm thinking about a very recent interview because that's what the memory is bringing to me right now. But I think what's possible in a short period of time is quite amazing, and I think hopefully that's what copywriters listening to our show, the message they take away and why they're inspired and they jump into the career is because you can do so much in such a short period of time. Not to overpromise it, but just we were talking to a CEO yesterday, and she was sharing the success she's had in her agency over the last 8 years. And it's multi-million-dollar business. And I think for me, the takeaway is just, wow, if we really focus and we really just stick with it and we're consistent, it's quite incredible what we can do in 8 years, 5 years. And so I think that's a big takeaway, and sharing those stories that continue to support that message.
Yeah. And to add to that, just there are so many ways to build a successful business. I know that it's really popular for gurus online to say, hey, I've got my method, and if you implement my system, you'll have, whatever the business is, right? And you're basically recreating their business for yourself. And yeah, it can work. And oftentimes it probably does. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's not the only path. There are so many ways. You can do what you did, Roy, where you start in-house and you get a job and then you move out. There are people who start out freelancing and figure it out for themselves. People who are starting in agencies. There are people who start out as copywriters and then work more into strategy or consultant roles. There's no one right way to build a business. Maybe there's one wrong way to build a business. I don't know. There are a lot of wrong ways to build a business, but there are also so many ways to succeed at what we do. Of course, there are things that can help you as you go along. And some of the things that we teach in our program, some of the things that you teach in your programs will help people shortcut that oftentimes. But you don't need to build Rob's business to be successful. You don't need to rebuild Roy's business to be successful, or Kira's business. You can build your own business. You can find your own way. And the fact that we've talked to, well over 250 copywriters who have done that, none of them are the same. It's amazing the many paths to success.
I'm so exhausted recently from two particular offers that clearly there's somebody out there pitching it. And one of them is, we are a commission-only LinkedIn lead generation company for service businesses. And I get like 5 of those pitches a day. Yeah. Somebody trying to get me leads off LinkedIn for commission only. And the other one is, oh, we'll take your YouTube videos and we'll convert them into TikToks and YouTube shorts and like all these short videos. And
no, thank you. No, thank you.
Maybe that is a great business model, but it also becomes super saturated quick when you have somebody who's just pitching that relentlessly as the next hot business opportunity. Yeah.
I was just going to add too, and I'm thinking about podcast interviews and the message too. I think what I took away is that you can have fun along the way. And some of the people who inspire me the most, copywriters, marketers, like they have boundaries. They have created business that has not taken over their life, even though many of us started there. And like they sound energized and excited about what they're building, and they're having fun along the way. And Carlene Inglade Cole reminds me of that, because our last interview with her, like, she's having so much fun in her business. She's having the time of her life. She's traveling. She's like rocking YouTube. And it's really inspiring to hear that and know that we can do that too. And we can start now.
Yeah, I can't imagine Carlene not having fun. So I guess that says something for, so I guess in the context of this, like paths to success for a copyright, obviously, well, I don't know. I don't like that question. I'm going to pivot away
I
from
want that question. What is that question?
Well, okay. So obviously community building has worked really well for you. Audience building through the podcast has worked really well for you. Here's the part of the question that I don't like. Is it right for everyone? Or what other paths, obviously it can work for some people, but what other paths might also be worth considering for copywriters for whom they're not sure what it would be like to start a podcast that gets 1.2 million downloads and have a community of 14,000 people that requires, daily check-ins and management. So respond.
Yes, I don't think a community is for everyone.
Totally.
Because number one, it's a ton of work to maintain it. The reason we're able to do that is because we have a team managing a lot of that to make sure it's running smoothly. But also, I just don't think everyone's personality is designed to create a community and to engage in that way. So podcasting, I tend to feel that everyone, I think Rob and I disagree here, everyone has a podcast in them, just like everyone has a book in them. I think that everyone should have a podcast, even if it's only one season long. We all have strong opinions. We all have interests, and that could easily cater to a podcast, whether or not it's professional or not, and is helping you make money. That's another question.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to podcasting, I'm not sure everybody needs a podcast of their own, but I do think just about everybody should be on podcasts. If you're a copywriter and you don't want to manage a community, you don't want to have your own podcast, that is fine. Like I said, there's a million ways to do this thing, but you still have to get noticed by clients. You still have to get out in front of your clients. And if you don't want to be pitching them, or if you don't want to be, approaching them one-on-one, you do need to be out there doing other things. And being a guest on somebody else's podcast is a great way to do that, especially if the podcast is in the niche that you serve. So, if I'm working for attorneys and I can get on 2 or 3 podcasts for attorneys, talking about marketing or talking about how to acquire more clients or, something like that, then of course you should absolutely be doing that kind of a thing. Otherwise, I've got to be making those connections in some other way, right? So does everybody need a community? No, not their own community. Does everybody need to participate in a community where they can get support, where they can have friends, whatever? Absolutely. It's only going to improve their lives. Even those of us who are extremely extroverted, who don't like to leave the house, more than once or twice a week, we can still benefit from that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
Introverted, right? Rob, you meant introverted.
Did I say not?
You said extroverted.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I was like, you and I are not extremely extroverted.
Yeah, I'm not. Sorry. That's a potential edit that you should probably be making if you made edits to this show, right? So
yeah, I'll edit that out.
Yeah.
Kira and Roy are sitting here like,
wait a second.
I don't think that's the word that you meant to put in there, which is a normal thing for copywriters.
Shame.
Yeah. So we, as 3 copywriters together on a podcast episode, we haven't talked much about the actual craft of copywriting. But I did put one question at the end of my list here that I wanted to make sure that I asked. And I'll pose this to each of you. If you had one single copywriting technique or strategy that you had to lean on every time, so you could be writing some sales landing page, you could be writing video script, you could be writing, Facebook ads or whatever. You're writing a piece of copy. what technique or strategy are you going to lean on every time, and why?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So, I mean, it's unfair to limit it to one, right? Because there are so many. I would say if I only had one and it was the thing I had to lean on, it would probably be around getting attention. Having the ability to capture somebody's attention, whether it's through something, curiosity, that kind of a thing, because without that initial attention, nothing else matters. If you can't catch the attention of your audience, then you never have the chance to, tell them your story, give your pitch, sell a product. None of that matters. And if I had two, then I would add to attention relevancy, making sure that you're talking to the right people, that what you have for them will help solve whatever the problem is, or help them make the gain that they need to make, or, that they can, in the jobs to be done vernacular, that they can hire it to fill that job that they need done in their lives.
Okay.
But yeah, that's
before
my two.
Kira, before you jump in with yours, I want to probe a little bit deeper on the attention thing. So Rob, in the context of okay, my main goal, which I completely agree. I have often, like even in the last week, said the first sale you have to make is the attention sale, because without it, nothing else matters, right? Like, what is if I say, okay, how are you going to do that? Right? Like, I'm your client and you're like, yeah, the number one thing that we have to do is get attention. Like, what are you going to pull out of your bag of tricks to make sure that you're getting the attention of our target market? And I know this vague generic target market, that's hard, but yeah.
And the answer is it totally depends, right? I mean, it depends on who you're talking to. It depends on the offer that you're making. So Ogilvy is really famous for that phrase about headlines, that, 80% of your time should go into the headline, because that's the thing that 80% read, and then only 20% read the body copy. Honestly, yes. I have a bone to pick with that. Like, I don't disagree that it's true, but I think one of the reasons why that's true is because so many headlines are bad that nobody finishes the body copy, right? If all of our headlines were good, the body copy would get way more than 80 or 20% of the reading, right? So, So is there one trick? I don't know if there's one trick. I love, stories as headlines. I love quotes as headlines. Anything that's going to sort of be that new catch attention, those kinds of things. I said that's the thing that I would rely on the most, but it's also not necessarily my best skill either. There are definitely people out there who catch attention far better than I do, and it's something that I probably ought to be improving.
Fair enough. And arguably, your second point of relevancy can go a long way, because if someone is saying, "Oh, I want to learn underwater basket weaving," and Rob's headline is the number one course on underwater basket weaving, that is going to catch their attention, right? Exactly. So relevancy can trump gimmicks when it comes to attention. So Kira, let's turn the question on you. If you had one single copywriting technique that you had to lean on every time, what would it be?
I like a good theme, like a party theme. I need a theme for everything. So whether it's an email, I need a concept to tie the copy to. If it's a sales page, I need it to hang on something that I can lean into, because I typically write personality-driven copy where it's like we really lean hard into it. So it could be a show, it could be about Stranger Things, or it could be talking about demons, or it could be pairing strange foods together. But any sales message I write, like, I need to be able to pull that in when it makes sense. Sometimes you have to tone it down, but that's when I'm having the most fun. And when I'm having the most fun is usually when I write better copy. But it's just geeking out on the creative side.
And Kira's copy is really good at that big idea. Like, she's really good at pulling that in and working it through an email or a sales.
That's probably a better way of saying it. A big idea. Yeah.
How do you find the theme or big idea that's going to get you excited? Like, you mentioned, let's say picking a show, Stranger Things. Like, what's the context where you're going to loop in Stranger Things into the copy and have that drive the energy of the piece?
Yeah, that's an example we use with our team and had a writer focus on that. It was the upside down world. So if we're selling a copywriting business program, we're talking about comparing the upside down world and what it looks like if you're not part of the business, the copywriter accelerator, compared to if you're in the real world and you do have access to the Copywriter Accelerator and everything you need to build your business, comparing those two to create a really strong visual that most people can relate to. And even if they don't watch the show, like they can get that concept pretty quickly.
So it's like a driving analogy, driving metaphor. I definitely use that type of approach often in my copy, and some of my favorite copy that I've written does the exact same thing. Like, or like I'll hear a client. I have a project I'm working on right now, and the client had, and I can't go into too many details, but the client had a history with like those gumball machines that are set up in businesses all around, like the spiral ones, right? And he had a history with that, and it was completely relevant, and he used it, right? Like it didn't come from me. He used it. It was relevant to the message for this particular offer. And I was like, yes, that's awesome. So you can talk about that particular thing, and that is the theme. And in this case, it was for an email, right? One of many emails in the campaign, but it's the theme. Like we can talk about these gumball machines and how awesome it can be to just like take bags of quarters into the bank, right? And then, oh, if this other thing is an opportunity to get bags of quarters, like that can be awesome too, right? And so I'm totally with you. And oftentimes it's either some creativity, some creative connecting the dots, or creative problem solving, or just knowing to listen, like as you're talking to the client, because they may have something like that they use all the time that you just don't know until you hear it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that's around nostalgia, whether it's talking about the gumball machine where we lean in because we miss it, we can relate to it, or it's talking about Stranger Things, which is really just nostalgia for the 80s. And like talking about previous decades also helps people lean in because you most likely like feel such a strong connection to that as well.
And I'm going to give you a call back to earlier in the show when we were talking about, all the different things we should be reading or doing. Like if you don't do that in your life, if all you read is a copywriting book, then the only headline, the only big idea that you're going to come up with is one that, Arthur Johnson or Eugene Schwartz or someone else has already done, right? But because Kira's exposed to the culture around us, she can pull from that into her messaging. We all should be doing more of that.
Yes. Awesome. Well, this is the point where, as good copywriters, we should make sure that there is a call to action in this episode. And so I want everybody who's listening to make sure that they check out the Copywriter Club. And I will include links in the description with this episode, wherever you're engaging with it, to join the Facebook group, to get the Copywriter Club by email, and out of selfish interest, and because I think that the episode is valuable, I'll include a link to my episode. Is there anything else that you would like to make sure that people go check out as part of the Copywriter Club? Or do you have anything to say about what they're going to get when they sign up for the email or join the Facebook group?
Yes.
Yeah, Rob, you've got something really good that you've been working on.
So we every year we do a survey of copywriters, asking them about their income, the prices they charge. We just this week that we're recording, so about 2 weeks ago, if this goes live in October, published to our blog all the results from that. It includes data about annual income for copywriters and content writers. It's broken out by male, female. It's broken out by area of the world that you live in. And then we also took the prices that copywriters and content writers charge for 22 different kinds of projects, broke it out by 5 different levels of experience. You'll find that at the copywriterclub.com blog, and we can give you a link to include, Roy, and all that. There's actually 3 different posts there on the blog right now, but if you go to that blog page, you can just sign up for a digital PDF copy of all of that data. It also includes 7 different pricing strategies and what to keep in mind when you're setting prices. It's a 24-page report, extremely valuable. There's a free digital download for anybody who wants it. When we asked people to participate in that survey, we said we would publish the results, to everybody in the world. In the past, we've kind of held on to it for just our group, but the information is just so valuable and ready. Anyway, if you're a copywriter, if you're a content writer, you got questions about pricing, go check it out. You won't regret it.
Absolutely. That is such a cool thing. And I know I mean, I took statistics classes in high school, in college, and the amount of like work that goes into figuring out the types of analysis that you have described there. Clearly, there is a lot of effort that went into creating this incredibly valuable resource, and arguably you could have charged a bunch of money for it and it would have been worth it to the right people, but it's awesome that you'll provide it for free. I will make sure that as this gets published that I include a link where folks can sign up for that. So that's also in the description. And Rob, Kira, thank you so much for joining me on Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. And to everyone who's watched or listened throughout this episode, thank you. I would love to know what you got out of this that is maybe the biggest takeaway for you as well. So Rob and Kira, thank you so much.
Thanks, Roy.
Thank you for having us. It was really fun.
Thank you once again for tuning in to this daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Remember, check out the links with this episode for even more value. Now make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and engage in every way you can to keep this show going and growing and delivering daily value to you. I'll catch you soon for your next big breakthrough.